thing Mercedes' big V-Class isn't short of is space. As a people carrier in the truest sense, its only real competition comes from other large van-based MPVs or public transport. This is the usefully revised version of the brand's W447 series model, and in using it, you might be on a shopping spree, heading out for a mountain bike holiday in the Alps, or driving prominent guests to a red carpet event. Either way, if you want to take up to 8 people and their luggage in a vehicle that makes a very high quality statement, then it's a difficult option to ignore.
There aren't many alternatives open to you if a really sizable people carrier is needed that can take 7 or 8 people plus all their luggage. And if that MPV must make a really sizable statement of quality, then the options reduce to just one, this Mercedes V-Class. Here we have a revised version of the successful W447 series model. Like its most direct competitor, Volkswagen's Caravelle, the only way that this V-Class can offer up to 8 seats and appreciably more space than is already available from cheaper Ford Galaxy or Volkswagen Charan class large people carriers is to be commercial vehicle based, in this case on a Mercedes Vito. Now that might not be the biggest van that Stuttgart makes, but it's quite large enough to create in the V-Class a very sizable MPV indeed. By the time this facelifted model was announced in 2019, over 209,000 examples of this super large people carrier have been sold globally since this V-Class range's original launch in 2015. Enough to seriously bother that Volkswagen Caravelle rival we just mentioned and to establish a Mercedes benchmark in this segment. Now that was something that this MPV's predecessor models, the original V-Class of the 90s and the Viano of the early noughties, never managed to do. That early first V-Class was plagued by reliability problems, and the subsequent Viano looked and felt embarrassingly cheap. This modern generation V-Class has successfully addressed both those issues, and Mercedes has been more successful in making both its styling and driving experience less like a van. As you'd expect, this revised model builds further on that foundation, primarily with big engineering changes. Now these include the all-new OM654 series 2-litre diesel engine, which both the mainstream variants use, a fresh 9G-tronic plus 9-speed automatic gearbox, and even the option of an EQV full electric version. Buyers also get minor styling changes, and active brake assist autonomous braking is now standard. As before, there are 7 and 8 seat versions across 3 distinct body styles, and there's now a top exclusive variant featuring luxury second row rear seats from the Mercedes S-Class, which creates a limousine-like ambiance. Plus, the continuing Marco Polo camper van versions get the styling and engineering updates too. But is it all enough to allow the V-Class at last to fully justify its premium pricing? Well, time to find out. Of all the super large MPVs on the market, this is the one that disguises its van-based underpinnings the best, especially in this revised form, thanks to the diesel engine and transmission transplant. Now we'll get to that. What you first need to know, though, is that we have a vehicle here that's as happy taking on a restocking trip to the garden centre with the in-laws as it is standing in for the team bus in a school football match. Direct competitors would of course say the same, but most of them can only deliver this capability in concert with a pretty utilitarian feel out on the road. The V-Class is also a fairly ponderous thing, but there's a quality and a heft to the way that everything works here that you wouldn't necessarily associate with a commercial vehicle. And there are other pleasant surprises too. The vast glass area ensures that this people carrier is simple to see out of, while the boxy shape means that a V-Class is easier to park than you might expect it to be. True, the rear seat headrests do block your view rearwards, but in compensation as standard you get a rear view camera and an active parking assist system that'll help you to identify a parking space and then steer you into it. Even the turning circle is relatively tight for an MPV that in this mid-sized long guise is nearly 5.2 metres long. You're looking between 11.8 and 12.5 metres depending on the body style you choose. We mentioned an update beneath the bonnet, and it's a pretty significant one. Gone is the rumbly 2.1 litre diesel unit, two variants of which powered the original version of this W447 series V-Class, mated to a 7G Tronic Plus 7-speed automatic transmission. Instead, this facelifted model is favoured with the brand's far cleaner and more sophisticated modern-era 2-litre OM654 series unit, paired with a smoother and more efficient 9G Tronic Plus 9-speed auto gearbox. We're trying that package here in the 163 horsepower V220D form that most buyers of this MPV will want. That gets you 380 newton meters, which you'll need given that even this base V-Class weighs well over 2.1 tons. As a result, performance is fairly leisurely. 62 miles an hour from rest occupies 11 seconds on the way to 121 miles an hour. Of course, you probably won't want to go very much faster than that in a car of this kind, but you might well appreciate a little more mid-range grunt from the engine up front if you're likely to be regularly using it for long distances, for towing, and or frequently travelling fully laden with passengers and their luggage. Should that be the case, then your dealer will point you towards the uprated 239 horsepower version of this engine that's fitted to the V300D version of the model. With that derivative, pulling power jumps to 500 newton meters, and that's enough to facilitate a rest to 62 time of 7.8 seconds and a top speed of 138 miles an hour. Of more importance is the top model's extra overtaking grunt though, and that's aided by a brief 30 newton meter over torque boost that cuts in to help in the mid-range and get you past those dawdlers rather more swiftly. A few things haven't changed here, and some loyal buyers might be rather disappointed to find that one of them is that for our market we continue to be denied the 4MATIC all-wheel drive version of this model that Mercedes does offer in many other countries. The brand reckons that few likely buyers will want that. Those that do will need to buy a Volkswagen Caravelle 4Motion instead. On the plus side, we continue to be impressed with the hushed level of refinement that a V-Class serves up. That fresh engine helps here, but a lot of the hush is also down to copious amounts of sound deadening insulation that have been added in to try to mitigate the wind noise which is generated by this bluff shape. Largely this has been effective, and the result is an agreeably pleasant high-speed cruising experience whatever the conditions. In a boxy high-sided vehicle like this, we particularly like the peace of mind that's offered by the standard side wind assist system. Now that compensates for sudden gusts that might otherwise force this vehicle from its intended path. This Mercedes also feels very stable when it's towing. It can haul along up to 2.5 tons if you specify the optional towing package. On the twisty stuff, you won't be expecting this Mercedes to handle sharply, and it really doesn't. If you want to push on though, a standard agility select system allows you to tweak the throttle response, the gear change timings, and the feedback from the direct steer speed sensitive steering to suit the way that you want your V-Class to respond. There are comfort, sport, eco and manual modes, but you'll quickly tire of playing with those. This really isn't that kind of car. With electrical assistance, that steering system is certainly an improvement on the anaesthetised setup that was offered on the W447 series model's Viano badged predecessor, but it's still about as communicative as a Trappist monk when it comes to telling you what's going on beneath the wheels. Body roll too has clearly been worked on, but there was obviously only so much that could be done with a vehicle of this size and weight. Why, though, would anyone really want to throw a vehicle of this kind about? Assuming that you're going to be regularly carrying at least 5 to 6 people, chucking a V-Class through a set of bends is going to be a recipe for car sickness that won't endear you to your passengers. In the same way, the slightly gruff note that the 2-litre diesel delivers, despite its vibration muffling balancer shafts, is likely to be masked in most cases by a cabin full of chattering people. You will be spared this issue if you decide to opt for the full electric EQV version of this model. That was announced just after this midlife update. Here, a 100 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery develops a 201 horsepower total output with 362 newton meters of torque, and it can offer a claimed driving range of 252 miles between charges. As with most EVs, though, the top speed is rather limited, in this case to 99 miles an hour. Here though, our focus is on the mainstream diesel versions which, like the EQV, have been developed with characteristic Mercedes thoroughness. Numerous engineering changes differentiate a V-Class from the Vito commercial model that it's based on, alterations having been made to such things as the spring rates, the support bearings, the strut towers, the dampers, the anti-roll bars and the bearings to create more car-like standards of ride and handling. Most importantly, standard agility control adaptive suspension has been added in, a setup that's able to tweak the damping to suit road conditions. It's not enough to make this feel like an S-Class luxury saloon, especially not if you're in a version of this model fitted with the largest 19-inch wheel rim size, but given what the German engineers had to work with, the supple, well-controlled quality of ride is very commendable. And there's certainly a much lighter area feel than you get in the S-Class or in any other boardroom level limo, come to that. A V-Class is different, and it's perhaps a cleverer way for the well-heeled to travel. Cheaper options in the class are plentiful, but if money is no object and you're browsing in this segment, we think you'd really like one of these. This apparently is the Mercedes amongst MPVs. Well, it certainly looks quite a bit grander than anything else on offer in the segment. And that's because the stylists have gone to quite a lot of trouble with this W447 series design to differentiate this V-Class package from that of the structurally identical Vito Tourer minibus model that rolls down the same Spanish production line in Vitoria. A few minor aesthetic changes will mark out this facelifted model to the V-Class Cognoscenti. As with other Mercedes cars, the front-end treatment now differs according to whether you've paid the extra for plusher AMG line trim or not, but all variants get a subtle redesign for the grille, the bumper and the lower air intakes. On the most affordable sport versions, the grille has twin louvres as before, but these sit over a smarter, diamond-structured black background, while further down the lower air intakes now extend across the entire width of the nose section and they feature chrome-framed corners. Here on this AMG line variant, the look is rather more purposeful. The grille here, as you can see, features a single louvred design that sits astride a glistening background of shiny chromed pins. And further down, there's sportier treatment that sees large corner cutouts embellished on each side by twin chromed slats. All the variants on offer now feature the distinctive nighttime driving signature of Mercedes' LED intelligent light system. Now this features 34 LEDs in each headlamp and it provides beams that turn with the wheel and adapt themselves to the kind of road that you're on. At the back, as before, you get these brightly illuminating full LED tail lamps and a deeply cut rear window with a lower edge that's embellished by this chrome strip. Small reflectors feature on the outer corners of the bumper, and on an AMG line variant like this one, there's this subtle roof spoiler too. Nothing's changed much at the side either, unless you're prepared to factor in this facelifted model's addition of 4 fresh paint colours and 4 new alloy wheel designs. 18 or 19-inch rims are available. We have the AMG 7 twin-spoke 19 inches here. With a people carrier of this size, disguising the necessary van-based underpinnings is no easy task, but again, the stylists have done their best to smarten things up. 2 sharp creases flow out of the front wheel arch and rise slightly in their journey rearwards in an attempt to add a bit more purpose to the body shape. Privacy glass, roof rails and those big wheels also aim to emphasise the car-like luxury feel, but going any further than that would mean compromising the boxy shape that makes this people carrier what it is. Space, Mercedes tells V-Class customers, is the true definition of luxury, and on that basis, this MPV must be very luxurious indeed, given its enormous square dimensions. Just how much space we're talking about here depends on the body style you choose. Now, this Mercedes comes in 3 sizes. Your starting point is the standard length 7-seater derivative, and that is 4,895 millimetres long. But most buyers tend to want the option of 8 seats, for which you have to choose one of the 2 bigger variants. Many choose this mid-range long version. Now, this one measures in at 5,140 millimetres. But there is also an extra long variant, which is an enormous 5,370 mils long, and that really is big. To give you some class perspective, an extra long V-Class is 31 millimeters longer than the biggest available L2 version of the Ford Tornado Custom and 66 millimeters longer than the largest long wheelbase version of the Volkswagen Caravelle. All V-Class variants are the same height, a 1,880 millimeter figure, which enables easy access to places like car washes and low-roofed multi-storey car parks. Right, we've seen enough out here. Let's take a look inside. And let's start up front by pulling open this large, wide-opening door, which slams with the kind of vibrating thunk that you get in a van. Still, there's not much else that's particularly LCV-like once you get behind the wheel, unless you count the agreeably high and commanding driving position. Mercedes claims to have made small changes to the design of the air vents and the instrument cluster dials, and there are some slightly different upholstery and trim finishes, but none of it amounts to very much in terms of changing the ambiance. So it's just as well that this was already very classy. The fascia is a smart two-section design with upper and lower parts separated by a three-dimensional trim element that tries to give the cabin a feeling of width. Depending on the spec level you choose, it'll feature either an ebony wood finish or this carbon-style detailing. Either way, further up, you get this lovely stitched dash top covering fashioned from man-made Artico leather, plus you're treated to Napa leather upholstered seats with armrests and discreet ambient lighting that can illuminate in a choice of 3 colours. In other words, it's about as different in here from the Vito van as Mercedes could possibly make it. Adding to the feeling of luxury is a sense of space. There's a yawning gap between the seats here, so you could easily head rearwards to separate squabbling kids or confer with VIPs should the back area seating configuration permit that. Given that this is supposed to be a wide-ranging update, we'd expected that Mercedes would have added in its latest high-resolution 10.25-inch centre-dash screen, the one that features, for example, on the facelifted GLC, complete with the brand's MBUX media system. Disappointingly, provision for that advanced setup is limited to the all-electric EQV version of this model. Diesel versions like this one continue with the brand's much older tech media package, or at least they did at the time of this test in the autumn of 2019 anyway, which means that as standard you'll be stuck with a pretty small 7-inch screen which features a rather old-fashioned Garmin sat-nav system. Now presumably this is to incentivise buyers to find the considerable extra fee necessary for the Command Online package that we're trying here, which gets you a much more sophisticated 3D presentation on a larger 8.4-inch screen. Via this, you can create in your V-Class a WLAN, that's a wireless local area network hotspot, plus you get internet access, unrestricted use of Mercedes-Benz apps, and live traffic information, along with a 10GB music register. Whatever your choice of infotainment system, its functionality will be primarily controlled by what at first glance looks as if it might be the auto gear stick. That is actually a stalk off the steering column here. Instead, this rather futuristic looking protuberance has been borrowed from the C-Class, and it actually works rather well once you get used to it. There's the usual rotary controller dial that swivels, slides and pushes, but here Mercedes has gone a step further. This higher surface turns out to be a touchpad that permits letters, numbers and characters to be handwritten, although in this right-hand drive model, of course, there's the awkwardness of having to do that with your left hand. Anything the infotainment display can't tell you will be covered off by the smaller colour screen that nestles between the 2 deeply cowled dials that you view through this 3-spoke leather-stitched steering wheel. This wheel is multi-adjustable, so it's easy to find a comfortable driving position. In fact, it's easy to get comfortable in almost every way. We particularly like the climate control system. That's borrowed from the S-Class with its diffuse, medium and focused variable flow settings. As you'd expect in an MPV, there's plenty of space to store stuff. There's a huge lidded central cubby under the centre stack, boasting 2 cup holders and a storage area, along with twin USB-C ports and an SD card slot. The doors have huge lower bins and an additional upper stowage area for smaller items. From outward appearances, the glove box also seems as if it's going to be big too, but turns out to be mostly taken up by the owner's manual. There's a pen clip and an upper ledge within it though. Mercedes hasn't forgotten to provide an upper sunglasses compartment, and there are ticket clips in the sun visors here. What else? The driving position. Well, we mentioned that it's nicely raised. Well, initial impressions suggest it'll also be rather upright and that these front A-pillars might slightly impede your view at junctions. Settle in, though, and you'll find that there's little to worry about, apart from the fact that these seats don't provide much side support when you're cornering. The way that you're seated in this MPV may not be especially car-like, but it'll give you a fine view of the traffic ahead, while any concerns over front three-quarter visibility are alleviated by these small quarter-light windows ahead of the doors. Rearward visibility isn't quite so good. As usual in a big MPV, the third seating row severely hinders your vision through the rear screen, so you'll be making frequent use of the standard all-round parking sensors and the rear reversing camera. While we're griping, we'll also tell you that some of the plastics lower down the dash are of questionable quality for a £50,000 car, but the further up you look, the nicer it gets. Right, time to move into the second row, where the standard electric sliding doors that you get on both sides of the vehicle glide back to reveal the enormous seating area. Now, the way it's specified depends, of course, on the seating configuration you've chosen and how you choose to position the provided chairs within it using these floor rails. With a 7-seat model configuration, you get 2 middle seats separated by a fold-out table, along with 3 individual chairs at the very back. Here, though, as you can see, we have the 8-seat cabin, and that will give you 2 rows of 3 abreast rear seating. Now, today we have positioned the 2 rows facing each other, and that's absolutely perfect for on-the-move business conferences and the like. This is something that you can only do with a super large sector MPV. In a people carrier which is merely large, like for example a Ford Galaxy or perhaps a Volkswagen Charan, that isn't possible, and not all super large MPVs allow it either. The seats provided are reasonably comfortable, although they feature bases that are a bit flat in terms of support for really long trips. In each row you can fold the middle chair forward if it's not being used, so as to create a middle table. Obviously, being able to slide these chairs about on the floor rails means there's the potential to position them in a way that will offer a vast amount of legroom, but the positioning question will have to be done before you set off. It's not easy to change things once you're on the move. For those seated at each row end, there's a 12-volt socket, a storage compartment, and above an overhead reading light and a roof-mounted vent. Third row folk at either end get these curious stand-up cup holders too, plus the electric doors feature small bins. If you have all the rows of seats positioned in conventional forward-facing form, then, as you'd expect in an MPV, the second row chairs will tilt forward to allow access to the very back here. In the third row of a long or extra-long V-Class model, there'd be vastly more space than you get in a Galaxy or Charan-class conventional large MPV. And large families will like the fact that 2 child seats can be clipped into the 2 outer chairs, while still leaving plenty of room for an adult to sit between the kids in the middle. Okay, let's finish with a look at luggage space. Now, before we go lifting this tailgate, worth mentioning that there is the convenience of this separately opening rear glass section if all you want to do is to throw in a few lighter items, or perhaps you don't have the space to open the full hatch. You certainly have to stand back when it comes to activating that. Once it is up, a canopy is created, which is quite helpful in bad weather if you're loading in luggage or trying to corral the kids around the car. The luggage space you get at this point will, of course, depend on the body length that you've chosen and also on the positioning of the third seating row. Even with the shortest standard length model, there is 610 litres of capacity with all the seats in place. To give you some perspective on that, if you were going to fill up, say, a Galaxy or a Charan with 7 people, there would only be around 300 litres of cargo space left to play with. That's not nearly enough for everyone's baggage. That is the main difference between MPVs that are merely large and those like this one that are van-based and supersized. Of course, with the bigger V-Class body styles, there's even more luggage room. 1,030 litres with this mid-range large model and a massive 1,410 litres if you go for the top extra long variant. Now, it's certainly true that a rival Volkswagen Caravelle or Ford Toneo Custom could offer a fraction more space than this, but it's really hard to imagine why you'd need it. There is a 12-volt socket featuring back here too. If you need to convey bulky items and push them further into the cabin, then you might miss the flexibility that a Galaxy or a Charan class MPV would give you of being able to simply fold the seats into the floor. Here you either fold the seat backs down onto their bases, or you have to take the individual chairs out entirely, which isn't easy because they're awkward to remove from their rails and they're also very heavy. Plus, of course, you have to have somewhere to store them. Of course, if you are able to take the second and third row chairs out, then you basically get yourself a removal van. In standard length form with all the second and third row seats out, a V-Class offers 4,200 litres of space. In extra long guys in the same configuration, well, you're looking at as much as 5,010 litres of fresh air. It's really a question of whether buyers will be able to stomach the thought of throwing things like muddy bikes or sandy surfboards into such a lavishly equipped cabin. The various optional boot tubs will help there, of course. There's no doubt that this is the premium choice when it comes to the market's largest segment of people carrying MPV, with V-Class pricing sitting in the £52,000 to £60,000 bracket, which is quite a bit more than Mercedes was asking when we tested the original version of this W447 series model back in 2015. Think in terms of an increase of around £10,000, which does seem to be a bit more than inflationary. Most buyers will be selecting between Sport or AMG line trim packages spread across the three body shapes available. There's standard length, which is 4,895 mils in length and seats 7. Then there's the long version, which is what we have here, which is 5,140 millimetres in length and seats 8. And finally, there is the extra long version, which is 5,370 mils long and also seats 8. Now, given that a standard length model really doesn't give you much more room than you would get in a rather more conventional Galaxy or Charan class large MPV, we think that you would ideally want to stretch at least as far as the long version, which we're looking at here, as I said, which costs £3,245 more than standard. Now, you would expect the biggest extra long version to cost more still, but actually, because of a different spec package, the premium over the standard version for one of those models falls a little to £1,935. Go for this long model and there is an additional trim option, a really special one. Ritzy exclusive spec boosts the cost of this MPV to a sky-high figure of around £92,000. But in return, you get a 6-seat interior decked out like the cabin of an S-Class limousine, complete with individual second-row powered seats that recline, cool and massage you. Now, if someone else is paying and you're the chairman of the board with a large family and important regular clients to carry, then why not? Whatever body shape you decide on, you'll have the choice of two versions of this facelift model's new 2-litre diesel engine. Now, it appears in its standard 163 horsepower form with V220D badging. We have that here, but if you regularly travel with your V-Class fully loaded, you might want to consider finding the premium of around £4,000 that Mercedes asks for the uprated 239 horsepower V300D version of that unit. Now, in other markets, there is a further V250D model with a 190 horsepower version of the same engine available, but that variant won't be offered here. A bit disappointingly, British buyers still can't have 4MATIC four-wheel drive on a V-Class either. Both versions of this car's 2-litre diesel engine are mated to the same 9G-tronic Plus 9-speed automatic gearbox. And we should also mention that you don't now have to have your V-Class with an engine. There is also a full electric EQV version of this model with a 100 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, and that develops a 201 horsepower total output. That can offer a claimed driving range of 252 miles between charges. We should also mention the alternative Marco Polo camper variants in the V-Class range. These lifestyle versions are based on just one body shape, the 5,140mm long length. As with the standard MPV, there is a choice of Sport or AMG line trim and the same V220D or V300D engines. Prices start from around £55,000 for the entry-level Marco Polo Horizon version, which seats up to 5 and is priced up to around £62,000. If you're going to be living in this camper derivative for more than the odd night, though, we would suggest that you find the extra £5,000 to get the more fully equipped top Marco Polo version, which seats 4 and is priced in the £60,000 to £67,000 bracket. Our focus here, though, is on the people carrier variant, and at this point we should let you know that if you are prepared to sacrifice a bit of class, power and luxury, it isn't necessary to pay quite that much for a Mercedes Vito-based people carrier. The brand's commercial vehicles division offers a Vito Tourer model, which is a bit more utilitarian, but with prices starting from around £30,000, could save you as much as 40% over the cost of a V-Class. With that vehicle, though, you would be getting a much less powerful 102 horsepower diesel engine, a considerably lower specification, less sophisticated drive dynamics and a vastly less luxurious interior. The Vito Tourer can take up to 9 people if need be, but that really does tell you everything. It's really more of a minibus than a car-like MPV, and it's designed merely for the functional movement of people, airport shuttle work, for example, or perhaps the transport of crews of builders. This V-Class, in contrast, provides luxury transportation for chauffeurs, hotels and large, well-heeled families. In that regard, its key rival is another German supersized van-based people carrier. That's Volkswagen's Caravelle. Now, in T6 guise, the VW is certainly a very credible rival. It's bigger inside and it's apparently about £10,000 cheaper than this V-Class. Look a little closer, though, and the picture is somewhat different. If you get that Volkswagen in the plusher executive guise that you'll need to match the spec of this Mercedes, including the automatic gearbox that this V-Class provides as standard, then the price difference between those two vehicles narrows to around £3,000. Now that is a premium that we think many potential V-Class owners will gladly pay to get this model's classier cabin, its extra specification, its livelier performance, greater efficiency and its more sophisticated driving experience. It's also significant that you can't have a really high-spec, long-wheelbase Caravelle. That Volkswagen's plushest executive trim level is only available with the short-wheelbase body style. Of course, the V-Class and the Caravelle aren't your only options in the super large MPV segment. If you want other alternatives, then there are 3 price and quality levels to consider. The starting point for this kind of car lies in the £25,000 to £28,000 bracket. There you'll find 2 South Korean contenders, Hyundai's i800 and SsangYong's Turismo. Now, top spec versions of both will cost you around £28,000, so there is a massive saving over this Mercedes. As usual, though, you get what you don't pay for. Neither the Hyundai nor the SsangYong can offer as much space as you get here. Both cost much more to run than a V-Class, and of course both feel very down market indeed compared to this Mercedes once you take a seat inside. For something a bit nicer, think in terms of paying either just above or just below the £40,000 mark, and that's where you'll find the 3 PSA Group models that are based on mid-sized Peugeot, Citroën and Vauxhall vans, the Peugeot Traveller, the Citroën Space Tourer and the Vauxhall Vivaro Life. Now, these models are efficient, they're spacious and they're well built, but as you might expect, they lack the quality sheen that Mercedes buyers are usually prepared to pay extra for. Now, if you simply want the largest and the most spacious people carrier of this kind, then a strong contender is the Ford Tourneo Custom, plusher versions of which are priced at or just above the level of a VW Caravelle, so think £40,000 to £45,000. But that model really does feel like a converted van. If, having considered all that, you conclude that there really is nothing quite like this Mercedes in the segment, then you're going to need to know just how generous the brand has been when it comes to standard spec. So we'll see. Now, before we get into what's offered with the two main trim levels available, Sport and AMG line, the first decision that a prospective V-Class buyer is going to have to make relates to seating layout. Now, we've already said that you'll need to have either a long model like this one here or an extra long variant to get your V-Class with 8 seats. That means 2 seats up front and then 3 seats each in the middle and rearmost rows. If you are looking at those longer body shapes though, then you'll also want to know that the standard length model's alternative 7-seat layout is available as an option should you prefer the idea of just 2 seats in the centre row, which frees up space for the insertion of a middle mounted fold out table. As mentioned earlier, the top exclusive trim level is available only with a 6-seat format. Enough on seats, let's get into spec. Now, what used to be the plushest trim level, Sport, is now the base option for V-Class buyers, and that partly explains the extent of the price hike we mentioned earlier. So, as you'd have a right to expect for the money being asked here, even entry-level variants include quite a lot. You get 18-inch 5 twin-spoke alloy wheels, plus a sophisticated LED intelligent light system that turns with the road and adapts to the kind of driving you're doing. Also included are privacy glass, roof rails, power folding mirrors, auto headlamps and wipers, and an easy pack automatic powered tailgate with a separate opening rear window. There are also electric sliding doors on both sides of the vehicle and a break-in and anti-theft system with interior monitoring and tow-away protection. As for standard interior features, well, an effective climate control system is pretty important for a glassy, square-sided vehicle like this one, and the V-Class gets a good one, a thermatic 3-zone setup to cool and warm both the front and rear of the cabin. There's also Napa leather upholstery and a heating system for the front seats that even includes the integrated armrests. Plus, you get lovely Artico faux leather covering for the upper section of the dashboard, complete with contrast stitching. Other standard features include classy branded door sills, ebony wood trimming inlays, and powered electric vent rear quarter-light windows, and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. With the long body style, you get a panoramic glass sunroof too. As for practicalities, well, you get a useful load compartment organiser, and that's complete with a removable foldable shopping basket. Standard driving technology includes an agility select system that allows you to tweak the throttle response, the gear change timings, and feedback from the direct steer speed sensitive steering, all to suit the way that you want your V-Class to respond. Plus, there's agility control, adaptive damping, and cruise control with the speed limiter. Parking this huge vehicle has fortunately been simplified too, thanks to a reversing camera and an active parking assist system that helps you to identify a parking space and then steers you into it. What about infotainment? Well, there's an Audio 20 CD infotainment system which comes with a 7-inch multimedia display via which you can access a Garmin Map Pilot navigation setup and Bluetooth link in your phone. Plus there's DAB radio, crystal clear front bass speakers, 2 USB ports and an SD card slot. On the subject of media technology, we should also mention that, as standard, the brand also throws in all the benefits of its clever Mercedes Me Connect remote online services package, and that's included for the first 3 years of ownership, and it's available on subscription thereafter. This allows you to connect to your car via desktop, via tablet or smartphone through a downloadable app. And it includes an emergency call feature which automatically alerts the emergency services with your exact GPS location in the event of an accident. Plus, there's breakdown recovery at the push of a button. Telediagnostics can automatically share maintenance issues with your dealer. A maintenance management feature, now that reminds you when a service is due and then alerts your dealer. And there's a parking time assist feature that works if you've parked up to alert you when your meter's just about to expire. For 3 years of ownership, you'll also get use of the brand's remote online services package. This allows you to lock or or unlock your car from wherever you are, and to locate your vehicle's position if you've gone and forgotten where you parked it. Now, if you lend your V-Class out to someone else, then a geofencing feature can be set up to alert you if it leaves a preset geographical boundary. And if the car's ever stolen, a vehicle tracker will show you its location anywhere in the world. So then, the entry-level sports spec includes plenty within the base price. We think, though, that most buyers will still want to go a little further and find the extra £1,700 or so to trade up to the kind of plusher AMG line trim model we have here, which, as usual with this trim level, is marked out by a diamond-style radiator grille and an AMG body styling pack for the front and rear aprons, the side skirts and the rear spoiler. Other AMG line features include larger 19-inch AMG 7 twin-spoke alloy wheels, metallic paint, AMG sports pedals and carbon look interior trim inlays. On to options. Almost all V-Class buyers opt to find £1,880 more for the Command Online infotainment system we've been trying here with this larger 8.4-inch screen. This gives you a more sophisticated hard disk drive navigation system with 3D map display along with live traffic information as you drive. There's also a speed limit assist system and linguatronic voice control. Command Online also includes a 10GB music register, unrestricted use of Mercedes-Benz apps with internet access while the vehicle stationary, plus the system allows you to create in your V-Class WLAN, a wireless local area network hotspot. There is also the eCall emergency call system that you can use if you're in trouble, which will automatically alert the rescue services with your exact location should you be involved in an accident that triggers the airbags, and that could of course be a lifesaver. What else might you be wanting to pay more for? Well, we definitely want to look at the glorious 15-speaker, 640-watt Burmester surround sound system, which also allows the driver to communicate more easily with the third-row passengers. In addition, on an MPV this big, we'd want to look at the 360-degree camera system, and you can also specify powered front seats with memory settings if that appeals. Most of these optional features come as standard as part of the sumptuous spec of the top exclusive boardroom level variant we mentioned earlier. Things like the Burmester sound system, the Command Online infotainment setup and the 360-degree camera system. As we've already said, the key inclusion with a V-Class exclusive lies with its two individual second row powered seats that recline, cool and massage and come with a footrest. Exclusive trim also gets you cooled climatised front seats, a panoramic roof and a roof liner in Dynamica microfiber. Whatever V-Class MPV variant you decide on, you might be interested in adding in a few extra practical touches. We'd be looking at the various boot tubs that'll protect the cargo area from messy loads and mucky dogs. Plus you could add in aluminium roof bars, a roof box and a bicycle rack that can take up to 3 cycles. For the inside you can add a modular system that clips onto the back of the front head restraints and can be used for the attachment of coat hangers, bag hooks and tablet holders. You could also go for a towing package which increases towing capacity by 500 kilos to 2,500 kilos and comes complete with an electronic stability system that prevents trailer sway. We'll say a word about aesthetics too. Opt for a base sports spec V-Class and you'll find that unless you want your car finished in either Pebble Grey or Jupiter Red, the only two solid colours, you'll have to pay your dealer extra for metallic paint. Right, let's take a break from the MPV world for just a moment and talk camper vehicles. Now, Mercedes wanted to take on the Caravelle-based Volkswagen California here, and the formula with the V-Class Marco Polo is much the same. As mentioned earlier, two basic options are available if you like the idea of camping in this Mercedes, the 5-seat Marco Polo Horizon or the more lavishly equipped 4-seat Marco Polo, and either one can be ordered with the same Sport or AMG line trim packages that we've just talked you through. Both models can be ordered at extra cost with a side awning in black or silver, and both get that staple of camper life, the pop-up roof. The Horizon version gets this in manually operable form with a 2-seater bed, plus there's also a 3-seater luxury couch and a bed extension. Tinted rear windows, interior ambient lighting and swivelling comfort spec driver and front passenger seats with armrests also feature. As for the top Marco Polo package, well, that gets you an electrically operable version of the pop-up roof, again with a two-seater bed. There's also a two-seater luxury couch and a bed extension and classy yachtwood flooring in the rear compartment. Now, the reason that this top variant is only a four-seater with just two seats at the very back is that space needed to be created for the installation at the side of the cabin of a full kitchenette package, including a refrigerator box, a gas hob with two burners, a sink and various stowage compartments. Other included luxury camping essentials are a diesel-powered auxiliary night air heater and even a camping table and two chairs in a fabric bag. At this level in the range, you can have an optional mattress topper and an optional high-end sound systems available too. In short, with the Marco Polo version of this Mercedes, you'll be all set for adventure. That's enough on camping. Let's focus now on the safety provision built into all versions of this Mercedes. Now, for this facelifted model, the key change in this regard is the inclusion, at last, of autonomous braking. Mercedes Active Brake Assist package warns the driver of an impending collision, and it will brake automatically if there's no response. Now, testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents, and it will decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. Otherwise, the standard safety package on this car is as it was before. The headline inclusions are a side wind assist system that compensates for sudden gusts of wind that might well blow this high-sided vehicle off its course at motorway speeds. And you get an attention assist setup that monitors your reactions as you drive for signs of drowsiness. If that's detected, then the system will alert you to stop for a restorative coffee. You can also tick off the tyre pressure monitoring system, Isofix child seat fastenings, Neck Pro anti-whiplash head restraints, a hill start assist system to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and of course twin front, side and curtain airbags. To hopefully ensure that you'll never need those airbags, there's ESP stability control and an ABS braking system that features a brake drying function for optimum stopping distances in wet weather. There are also adaptive brake lights that flash in panic stops to warn following motorists. If you want to go further, then you'll have to tick the box for the driving assistance package. That costs extra. Because this car is one of Mercedes' older designs, it can't offer the choicest elements of the brand's latest camera-driven safety and semi-autonomous driving tech, but there is still plenty of kit available for buyers who want to add in technology. With this extra cost pack, you get 4 further key features. There's lane keeping assist. That's there to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway, and blind spot assist. That's there to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another driver. Cleverest of all, though, perhaps, is the motorway safety peace of mind that you'll get from the Distance Pilot Distronic setup. And now that is much, much more than just cruise control. It'll keep your steering straight for a start, and it'll automatically maintain a safe distance to the traffic ahead, even seamlessly stopping and starting the car if you come across a tailback. Should you still have an accident in spite of all that, then the driving assistance package also includes a pre-safe anticipatory safety system which braces the car for an impact by tensioning the seatbelts and by closing the windows. The Federal Office of Statistics reckons that the driver of a Mercedes is 9.6% less likely to have an accident than the driver of a car of another brand. And if you look at what's on offer here, you can begin to see why. For a vehicle of this V-Class's considerable size and weight, the fuel and CO2 returns, which are on offer from the new era OM654 Series 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel engine, aren't at all bad. They represent a 13% improvement on the readings that were delivered by the previous OM651 Series 2.1-litre power plant. In this base V220D, expect a WLTP-rated combined cycle fuel reading of 47 miles per gallon, and that means a decent range from the 70-litre fuel tank. That goes along with 155 grams per kilometre of any DC-rated CO2, regardless of your choice of body length. For the alternative V300D variant, the respective figures are virtually the same, 47.8 mpg and 155 grams per kilometre. To give you some perspective, that's an improvement of around 30% over the figures that you get from a rival Volkswagen Caravelle. And, as you'd expect, this Euro 6D Temp OM654 series unit meets the stringent RDE, Real Driving Emissions Standard. A lot of work has been put into the new engine to achieve those kinds of returns. For a start, it's 17% lighter than the outgoing unit, plus the cylinder spacing is shorter and internal friction has been reduced by 25%. Technophiles may also want to know that there's a new stepped recessed combustion process, dynamic multi-way exhaust gas recirculation and a close coupled exhaust gas after treatment system. Plus, as before, this model benefits from the usual Mercedes Blue efficiency measures. These features include low rolling resistance tyres, battery management optimisation, ultra efficient on-demand fuel pump technology, electric power steering and, most importantly, an eco start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, say when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. The impressively sleek 0.31 CD drag factor also helps, and that's the same as you get, for example, in Lexus's LFA supercar. Of course, the driver will need to play his or her part, perhaps by regularly selecting the Agility Select System's Eco setting, or perhaps by keeping an eye on the useful consumption display, which is one of the screen options that you get between the two main instrument dials. Go for the extra cost Command Online Infotainment System, and the sat-nav system will also provide you with special Eco Route options. If efficiency really is a key consideration for you in running this Mercedes, you'll want to consider the all-electric EQV variant that we've briefed you on elsewhere in this film. To reiterate, it uses a 100 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery that can offer a claimed driving range of 252 miles between charges. The length of time those charges will take will vary as usual on the type of charging point you visit, with an AC charging 11 kilowatt charge point, which is what you'd have in a garage wall box, and it's the kind of thing that you'll find at most public charging stations. Your charging time from empty to full in an EQV will be around 10 hours. Find yourself a fast charging station though, with a DC charging 110 kilowatt supply, and your EQV could be charged from 10 to 80% in just 45 minutes. Should you miss a planned charging stop, an active range monitoring system will activate in your EQV to try to ensure safe completion of the journey. This is assisted by an incorporated E+ driving mode, which optimizes the vehicle's parameters to maximize the range. Here, though, our focus is on the mainstream diesel-powered V-Class models. With these, you can expect residual values to be predictably strong, and servicing costs should also be affordable. Plus, the 3-year warranty is built on by Mercedes' Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have your car serviced at one of the brand's franchise dealerships. Your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check too by an assist dashboard service indicator. Now that will monitor engine use and it'll tell you exactly when a garage visit's due. Service intervals are usually every 2 years or 25,000 miles, whichever comes around sooner. There is also an optional service care package that takes care of routine maintenance. It spreads the cost of regular servicing, and it guarantees the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services, and covers the cost of all recommended service items like brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. Residual value should be strong after the industry standard 3-year, 36,000 mile operating period. Experts predict that a typical V220D AMG line variant like this one would still be worth 53% of its original value. That only leaves insurance groupings, which inevitably vary depending on the engine, the trim level and the body length that you choose. For the V220D, the ratings of the mainstream MPV variants vary between 37 and 38. For the V300D, they vary between groups 42 and 43, although the top exclusive limo-like version, that's up at group 46. This V-Class may occupy something of a forgotten backwater in the Mercedes product range, but it's still a model that makes a lot of sense. In fact, assuming that you can't face budget brand transport and you don't want something that is very obviously a minibus, we'd argue that there really aren't too many alternatives to V-Class motoring if you need to transport up to 8 people in the kind of style to which they would doubtless quickly like to become accustomed. Volkswagen's Caravelle is the obvious alternative, and like some other rivals, its boxier, more van-like dimensions means that it can offer slightly more interior space than you'll get in this Mercedes. But that VW doesn't really have the polish of this V-Class. Yes, this Merc costs more, but you also get a lot more in return. A classier look, a much nicer cabin, and a far more sophisticated driving experience. It's been described as the S-Class of posh people movers, and there is something in that. In a Caravelle, even a very nice one, you never really forget that you're in a converted van. Here, in contrast, the ambiance can be far more that of a luxury limousine. Despite that, with its rare combination of spacious seating and generous luggage capacity, this Mercedes is a paragon of practicality, beautifully bridging the gap between MPV and minibus, especially in this revised form, a guise in which small enhancements have made a useful difference. The 2-litre diesel engine is a big improvement, as is the new 9-speed auto gearbox, and this MPV now feels more modern in terms of its safety tech. Plus, for the time being anyway, no other player in the sector can offer the option of a full electric variant, all of which is just as well because this Mercedes has become a very expensive option in this segment. You really have to want one to pay the premium for one. But you just might. What it all boils down to is that if you want a car, buy a car. If, though, you need a people carrier, buy one that can really do the business. The V-Class is part of a small but very select breed of models answering that calling.